Good afternoon. My name is Aminur Rahman, but just call me Sammy. This is for the project coordinator role, this video interview. I apologize if I'm not looking straight into the camera. I have the view of my camera here, my notes here. I got this whole setup, like microphone here for your viewing pleasure. So the first question, which community-led solutions for people hit by climate impacts deserve wider support? In terms of community-led solutions, we have the LCRP, London Climate Ready Partnership. And why this is important is that it's partnered with quite a few big names, like for example the Mayor of London. However, obviously this has already got huge support through corporations, so maybe we should focus more on specific regional climate action groups. For example, Islington Impact reports. So the ICC here, the Islington Climate Centre, they do their own reports and they do their own actions, and I think they're quite an important group as they get the community together and they're quite community led. So when it comes to community led solutions, we should focus more on regional climate action support groups, in my opinion. Now we have, if you set up a consultation or decision making group led by those affected, how would you design its powers and operating rules? I'm quite allergic to the word power. I always think of like hierarchy. But obviously, when there's a project, you need a project manager. So, like, I have to kind of ignore that. And when I think of powers, well, obviously, if we're talking a decision making group led by those affected, then the decisions should be dictated by those that are affected. So maybe those that are affected at the top, if we're talking very shallow, um, those affected at the top, and then maybe people facilitating the group in the middle, and then larger groups at the bottom when it comes to bigger decision making, like maybe local councils, decision making group. If we're talking like an institution of itself, like a group, if we're talking more at like a micro level, so like a people's assembly, then obviously the manager should lead the people's assembly and then they give their ideas so then they can be the middleman between the group and the community, and things along those lines. But in terms of like consultation, decision making groups, obviously those who are affected, those who have gone through the lived experiences, should be at the top. And if we're talking like logistics, maybe a supermajority vote where things don't get, like, if it's like 51% to 49, the 51% isn't like concrete. Like it need to be a very big majority decision in terms of that group for it to go forward. What kinds of evidence or data most persuade decision makers to change unfair systems, and how should we collect them? In terms of persuading decision makers, obviously, my mind instantly goes to petitions. But as recent events have shown, petitions have been quite ineffective. I would say maybe quantitative data if the decision makers are empathetic enough to see measurable inequalities like health outcomes and even life expectancies, then hopefully that should sway them. And obviously, just testimonies from people, again, lived experience led by those who are affected, testimonies I think are very important. Describe a cross sector collaboration that could drive changes at scale. What conditions would it need? Well, the LCRP again, if we're talking a large scale London Climate Ready Partnership, they've got partners with London Councils, London Fire Brigade, the Met Office, TFL, um, just Environment Agency. We'd need, if real change were to come at scale, then that's the collaboration we need. That's the large collaboration we need, and they've made it. They've coordinated heat risk in London, in London, that so whereby those that are most affected, they can go help those in case of a large heat wave. And so obviously a cross sector collaboration at that scale is needed, because the funding of that must be large. um, how can community owned assets or enterprises create lasting economic fairness? Give one practical model. a community energy cooperative model such as Repowering London. Repowering London is community owned solar energy. And obviously, solar energy, where can you particularly go wrong except from the price of installing it? However, if it's community owned, then the funds come together and then that's distributed fairly. So then that one of the biggest downside is now removed, which is excellent. And on top of that, they work with local authorities like Hackney Council, Islington Council, and they've had fun. The funders are from Mayor of London and the Community Fund. Like if we're talking specific examples, then I would say Repowering London, in terms of economic fairness, because then that reduces one's energy bills. But we'll get on energy in terms of private corporations and energy. We'll get onto that later. Facing barriers to services, what concrete measures would you remove or add to fix access? Well, firstly, a good website. A lot of government websites are just really hard to navigate, especially like when it comes to the government, like .gov specifically. And I know, and they do surveys. That's the thing. Like taking in surveys and trying to find out how to make it more accessible. For example, maybe a dictation or things like that, or just guides, or maybe like a physical guide along those lines. And maybe a central customer service number or email might help a lot too in terms of stuff like that. And obviously, just like a central hub that's very easy to navigate, because obviously everybody's at different levels of digital literacy when it comes to just different age groups. Like, so obviously having a website with maybe like a low reading age, and some things along those lines, like it needs to be accessible to everybody at any level of digital literacy. When mobilizing public support, which communication styles or narratives best push for systematic change? Give examples. Well, I would say real storytelling from real people. If the thing I just said earlier, community and energy cooperative model, that would mean nothing to like a poor person who can't afford heating. That would mean nothing to them. They would need something more clear, something more human, something more simple for them to understand. And just not like technical like jargon. It's just like it just won't be useful to them. In terms of examples, mobilizing public support and like communication styles, I know the guide said not to avoid politicians, but if we're talking recently, like my Mum Dani's campaign, he was walking around the streets. He was talking to people. He was talking to regular people, asking them what their issues were. When I myself did a campaign with an independent MP, and we did issues such as climate change, and we were in the town centre, and we were talking to regular people. If a social media campaign was required, then talking to regular people, or showing other people that we are willing to work with regular people, will sway them, because then they'll see that we're not just bureaucrats. We're not like unempathetic, apathetic bureaucrats at the top. But that's again just an opinion. Which policy changes would immediately improve the basic rights of most overlooked groups? If we're talking London, okay, all of England, a guaranteed minimum wage that doesn't just adjust to inflation, it adjusts to the cost of living. The cost of living crisis. The word crisis, we're so desensitized to it. It is not hyperbolic. People are starving. People are having to choose between heat or food, and that's abhorrent. How can we say we live in a first world country? I'm going on a tangent. A guaranteed minimum wage. A guaranteed minimum wage that actually that adjusts towards the cost of living. And then maybe better employment services too. You've probably, though, whoever's watching this, you've probably got hundreds of applications already from people just trying to find a job, right? And that's because there's just a lack of employment services. I'm privileged. I'm privileged to have to do this. I have a phone, I have a computer, I have a microphone. This is a privilege for me to be able to do this. Not everybody will have this privilege. And everybody deserves that privilege, however. How would you measure whether a systems change project actually produced greater fairness? What long-term indicators would you track? Well, reduced pay gap and inequalities. I think that's a pretty big long-term indicator, maybe even life expectancy. The Home Office has the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities have data that allow you to look. So children, absolute low-income families, it will show um, what detriments of their health they have, and from 2019 to now, it's decreased. So I think that would be a big policy change. How would you measure whether a systems change project actually, sorry, if you had one opportunity to propose a reform to policy leaders, what would you propose? And how would that reform create chain of positive effects? I would have proposed so much. That is such a large like question. And I think the skill comes in like being concise with that. And I would say just focusing on public services and nationalizing them too. Nationalizing them would be huge. Nationalizing rail would be easier for people to travel for jobs. Nationalizing energy and gas, just having those basic necessities affordable would change so much for the regular person. Even rent, just having like more regulations on rent. I'm paying a lot to be in this room right now. And again, that's a privilege, as I said earlier. Everyone deserves to have this opportunity, but everybody won't. So having a proposal reform, it would be for local councils and just the government in general to focus more on public services than appealing to larger corporations. Thank you for listening. I hope you will consider me, and I hope this was my first take. I hope this is adequate. Thank you very much.